Thank you very much. Again, my name is Donny Martorello. I'm the Carnivore Section Manager for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And before I jump into this, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for offering us to come here and present and give you a quick snapshot of the status of wolves in Washington. We're also here to listen, and we're here to learn. We have with us our Fish and Wildlife Commission Chair Miranda Wecker here also, and the Director of our agency, Director Phil Anderson, again here to listen and learn and engage in the discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, and Commissioner Jay Keeney. Thank you, Miranda. And others I may have missed out there. With that, I'll jump right in. Quick overview of the items I'm going to talk about. A little bit about Washington's Wolf Conservation and Management Plan and the goals of that plan. A little bit about just the population status and our pathway to recovery in Washington. How we track and monitor wolf populations in the state. Touch a little bit about wolf-livestock conflict, obviously a big item of discussion item, and then some of our outreach. Starting off with our Wolf Conservation Management Plan, this was a very comprehensive plan. Took about 5 or 6 years to complete. A plan that went through several iterations of public review. It was helped develop by a 17-member citizen panel that helped draft and write the plan. So the take-home message here is we understood how big a challenge it is to manage wolves in the state and how important it was to have a good, solid plan, a pathway towards recovery, and we think we have that. The 4 key goals of the plan are to, of course, first to restore sustainable wolf populations across the state. Knowing that and looking at the other states that went before us, we had the advantage of having several other states begin wolf management about a decade before us. We knew some of the big items that would be a part of recovery in the state, and those are reflected in our goals. Manage wolf-livestock conflict, maintain a healthy prey base, and then develop public understanding and coexistence of wolves in the state. And I'll touch on a couple of these. I'm not going to talk a lot about the prey base part at this point. So first, the recovery goals in the state. Our recovery objectives are to have 15 successful breeding pair for 3 consecutive years, distributed equally in 3 recovery areas of the state. These 3 areas, North Cascades, South Cascades, Northwest Coast, and Eastern Washington, those are our 3 recovery areas. A little bit about what a successful breeding pair is, I think many of you know, but it's a breeding pair that raises pups, and at least 2 of those pups survive until December of that year. Then they hit this measure of a successful breeding pair. The second tier of recovery objectives is we may actually reach 18 successful breeding pair for a single year, so it's either one of those objectives distributed around the state equitably amongst the 3 recovery areas. In terms of packs in Washington right now, we have, in December last year, we do our annual reports every December. We had 13 confirmed packs in Washington. We've added 2 to that map here recently, that being the Goodman Meadows pack and the Profanity Peak pack. As you can see, of those 15 packs that are on the map, all but 3 of those are in the eastern Washington recovery area. Essentially what we're experiencing in Washington is a wave of recovery that's spawning out of Idaho and Montana and BC, that's moving from the northeast or from the east westward. We do have wolves that are coming into Washington now from Oregon, and expect to have a pack there probably this year on the pack map. A little bit about the legal status of wolves in Washington. That's the color phases here. The entire state is state listed as endangered, and then the eastern third of the state is federally delisted, was a part of the Northern Rocky Mountains distinct population segment, and the western 2/3 is federally listed. In terms of our trajectory of wolf recovery, we are experiencing a path similar to the Rocky Mountain states. We're seeing, in terms of species recovery in general and thinking about other species, it's very rapid. Since 2008, we documented our first pack. We had 13 packs in 2013 and expect to add packs to that for this update this coming December. If we dial in a little bit and look at the trend in successful breeding pairs, here on the left side of your screen, we see that same pattern. And on the right side is the trend in the minimum number of wolves that we see every December. Again, a similar pattern. if we were actually to, since we're talking about science today and those kinds of things, if we were actually to fit a geometric growth to that, it's about a 39% growth rate over the 6-year period of time. So a tremendous, very rapid increase in wolf populations, right on mark with what we saw in the northern Rocky Mountains. And so there's no reason at this point to believe that we're on a different path in terms of the rapid recovery that we saw in the other western states. In terms of monitoring wolf populations, that's lots of boots on the ground. Year-round, we're out there trying to capture and radio collar wolves, either during the summer months with leg hold traps or from a helicopter during the winter. That's our vehicle for tracking our pathway to recovery. It involves track counts in the wintertime, trying to get estimates of pack size, aerial flights, looking outside of the airplane, counting the number of wolves to generate our minimum count. That's really the bread and butter of tracking towards our progress towards recovery. All of that starts with leads from the public, from folks that are out there in the field, our partners with the Forest Service and BLM and Department of Natural Resources and many others. We have an application on our website where folks, if they see or hear wolves, they can jump on and log that, and then we look at that information and look for those hot spots of where we think there might be pack activity. And what you're seeing here is in 2014, all the reports of wolf activity we saw. Of course, many of those unconfirmed and likely not wolves, but we try to look for those patterns. From that, all that information, again, I said that's our pathway to kind of monitor our progress towards recovery of actually handling wolves and putting radio collars on and that intensive work. And what you see here is a map of all those telemetry locations from GPS collars since 2008 that kind of demarcate where our packs are. And then we're seeing some of the similar patterns to other states about dispersal. This speaks to the rapid recovery rate that we're seeing. Wolves are a great colonizing species. They are incredibly mobile, good reproductive rates. So patterns that we're seeing very similar to the other states. With that, I'll talk a little bit about some of our protocols for managing wolf-livestock conflicts in the state. Again, a known entity for us in the planning phase. We knew this would be a big part of wolf management and have dedicated an entire chapter of our wolf conservation management plan to this. Knowing that it was going to be a big element for us, the first thing we did is kind of a rollout of conflict specialist staff around the state. And what you're seeing here is the new conflict specialists that are distributed across the state to help deal with the new demand, the new challenge of dealing with wolf-livestock conflict and being responsive and being able to do depredation investigations and follow up on those, etc. We've also established a citizen panel advisor group. It's our wolf advisor group. It's made up of 9 members, and their mission is to help advise us on implementing the wolf conservation management plan, and I see many of those members here in the audience today. And we meet with them on a regular basis, and I'll go through some of the products that they've actually worked on. The first one is, and this gets at managing the wolf-livestock conflict in more of a preventative sense, is establish what we call a checklist of non-lethal preventative measures. It's about a 3 or 4 page document that articulates and helps us interact with producers about all the preventative things they can do, dealing with carcass piles and fladry and all those various sorts of things. It also establishes kind of the minimum required ones. I know we're going to talk about lethal control later today. I'll talk about it a little bit in the presentation, but it also establishes what are those best management practices that we require a producer to do before we would even think about lethal control in a chronic livestock wolf conflict situation. And you can see those here on the screen. And many producers around the state, these are already current practices. And for some, there are some new items on here. A similar product that our Wolf Advisor Group has been working on is taking that same sort of information from a checklist to something that's more of a contractual agreement that says that you will do these things, and if there are some cost-sharing programs that we can help out with for range riders or fencing or more long-term preventative non-lethal kinds of tools, that we would enter a contract to do those. And so it's called a Damage Prevention Cooperative Agreement, and we have about 18, 19 of those around the state right now with producers. And then we have various other kind of more non-lethal projects, if you will. This is an example of a Carcass composting facility to where we're trying to help producers, instead of having bone piles on their lands or where they graze, to have a facility that's secure, away from predators and carnivores and scavengers, so that those items aren't available for wolf scavenging. And then finally, in situations where we do see chronic wolf livestock conflict, we do have a protocol that we've established for when we might consider lethal control. And I won't go through this in any detail, but it starts out with confirmed depredation 1, and then a look again to see are there additional preventative measures we can do, and then on down the list. And about 3 times we keep coming back to that and saying, have we exhausted all the preventative things that we can do before we ever get to a situation where we start considering lethal control? And these are available on our website for anybody who'd like to look over in more detail. In terms of our experience so far in Washington, what you're seeing here is in white is the number of packs from 2008 to 2014. You can see I've added a, let me back up here. I've added, the 2 additional packs here, so that's kind of a preliminary estimate. We'll be providing that final estimate of number of packs this coming December. But that's in the white, and then in the black is the number of packs that have depredated on livestock. And we're seeing a pattern very similar to the other, the Rocky Mountain states, where about 80% of the times we don't see conflict, and about 20% of the time, or even less than that, we're seeing situations where packs or wolves are in conflict with livestock depredations. If we looked at it a little bit closer and we look at the number of depredations by year, we can see a couple spikes in our recent history in Washington. This was the wedge pack scenario where we had a chronic depredation scenario in northeastern Washington. And then this year, of course, the one mostly here is depredations on domestic sheep that we had in the recent Huckleberry pack. And then the 2 occasions that we've removed wolves in this state, 7 wolves in 2012 in the wedge pack, and then 1 wolf in the Huckleberry pack this year. So to date, we've removed 8 wolves in the state for conflict situations. Bringing it home here, our last, again, not going to address the impacts on prey and managing for wolf-prey interactions. I'm going to skip down to the last one, and probably the most challenging one that we're facing right now, and that is develop an understanding for coexistence with polarization, as Dr. Martorello talked about, and how tough of an issue that really is for us. We do have some projects, if you will, that are helping us navigate down that are on the ground kinds of projects. One is one that we're doing with WSU, where they're looking at actually interaction rates between livestock and wolves and putting collars on both and trying to understand how those interact. Also looking at assessing in a scientific setting the preventative tools that we have out there to let us know which ones have a real strong scientific rigor behind them. We're also working with UW here on more of the human dimension side. It's probably one of the most important ones that we have looking forward that we have to tackle, and that is the human dimension side of wolf management. And what does that mean? And are there other ways to offset and mitigate wolf livestock conflict, like through economy-based kinds of solutions? We also are working closely with Western Wildlife Outreach on a series of projects informing our public, those that are geared towards livestock producers and helping them understand some of the preventative tools they can do, those that are geared to just our public so they have a better understanding about the ecology and biology of wolf populations, and then one's geared towards hunters so they understand the dynamics with ungulate species, with deer, elk, and moose in the state. And then, of course, we do our ongoing outreach that we normally do in the various publications that we have, and news releases and website and public meetings and et cetera, and try to engage with the public on as many of those fronts as we possibly can. So this is kind of my wrap up. So far, we are progressing towards recovery at a rate similar, like I said, to the Northern Rocky Mountains, one that's impressive for us, seeing the kinds of growth rates that we're seeing in Washington State. So we're advancing on that front. We feel that we are prepared for dealing with livestock conflict situations. We're implementing our plan out how it's written and following that and progressing through that, those challenges. Probably one of our biggest challenges, and our director phrased it the best here on an interview with TVW recently. One of our biggest challenges is just the polarization between the two sides of this issue. It's one that's been around for a couple decades now in other states, and it's here in Washington, and just as polarized as it has been in other states. So with that, we'll do questions at the end, it sounds like. I'm going to jump in now to, somehow, with a little help, to Oregon. I'm just stepping in here for Russ Morgan, who's my counterpart for Oregon. So I'll try to deliver his message the best I can, and bear with me a little bit. Oregon and Washington have very similar paths. They produced a plan also. I'm going to go through this similar kinds of components of his presentation that I had. They adopted their plan in 2005. Their plan calls for updates or reviews every 5 years, and they did one in 2010. Again, a large public process, a citizen panel to help write that plan, and as I said, a reevaluation every 5 years. They're seeing almost the exact same pattern of recovery in terms of progress towards meeting the recovery objectives in the state. Currently have 64 wolves in their last count in 2013. You see the same pattern here in the number of wolves in the state and the number of packs and the successful breeding pairs. At the end of last year, I believe they had 9 confirmed packs in the state. This is their 2014 map. I think they're up to about 10 right now. Very similar to Washington. It's a progression of colonization that's sweeping from east to west. And you can see here the famous OR7, again, speaking to what a great colonizer this species is, the ability to move hundreds of miles, maybe meet up with another mate and start a pack, similar to our situation in Teanaway and Lookout Pack. They are currently in phase 1 of their plan, which calls for an eastern part of their state for 4 successful breeding pair for 3 consecutive years. They think they might be reaching that objective for delisting for that part of the state as soon as 2015. And then, of course, different recovery objectives for the western part of their state. They have a similar dissection across the state in terms of federal listing, where the little less than the eastern third is federally delisted, and the biggest part of the western part of the state is federally listed as endangered. Very similar process for monitoring wolf populations, very intensive with captures, putting radio collars on, tracking those animals, and then coming back in December and establishing their final counts for how many packs and successful breeding pairs and minimum number of wolves in the state. They currently have 13 GPS collars out on their 10 packs. A little bit on take and mortalities. Like Washington, they've experienced just the vehicle kills, wolf vehicle collisions in the state. They have removed wolves lethally. I didn't get a clarification on the take. I don't know if that is unlawful take or tribal take in the state. That's one I did not hear back from Russ on exactly what form of take that is, and then a little bit of disease issues. To date in Oregon, they've had 148 total investigations, 41 in 2013 of wolf livestock depredation investigations. 48 of those were confirmed wolf depredations, and mostly up in the northeastern corner of the state. In terms of their patterns of wolf-caused livestock losses, you can see a spike there in 2009 with sheep. One of the patterns that we see from the Rocky Mountain states that when wolves do depredate on sheep, the numbers can be quite high. And then for the most part, it's depredations on livestock. It tends to be calves, and then a few here in the last couple years. One of the new things for Oregon is they've recently codified in a settlement in Oregon. They've recently codified their process and protocols for depredation investigations and the protocol that may lead to lethal removal. That's now available all on their website. And not only is it codified, but trying to address the transparency issue. So all of those steps are viewable to the public. They have to go through a process where they identify known wolf activity areas and areas of depredation activity. You can see they have 10 areas of known wolf activity and 4 depredation areas. They currently have one pack that, and this is maybe a few days old, they have one pack that has 3 qualifying events for depredations, and they consider lethal control at 4 or above. And as I said, as a part of that codification, all that process and protocols are updated on their website for the public to view. And they've recently started a research project looking at the interactions and predation rates of wolves and cougars and how those 2 top predators interact on the landscape. And maybe I got through all of that in 20 minutes. And I'd be happy to answer questions afterwards or as the group gets to questions. Thank you very much.